Welcome, 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 beautiful hearts. We have an introduction mastery empowerment course for you today. We are so excited. I'm here with Jean Ang, who channels the Arcturian healing frequencies. Today, we're talking about the Arcturian high frequency perception transmissions. This is how we can develop our clairs even more. Hi, Jean. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Laura. Hi, everyone. Really looking forward to this next series in the Mastery Empowerment classes.
We are too. Now, this is fascinating because we are developing some skills. It's almost like a precursor to telepathy as we develop our high frequency perception. And so there's a couple of areas that we're going to be working with. Tell us what high frequency perception is. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, I think we're all innately born with the ability to sense or intuit, vibrations outside the light spectrum, as well as kind of the sound spectrum, and also the vibratory spectrum of sensing or feeling, pain and just sensations from our nerves. So these are all very limited range, of all the different frequencies. And if you take, another sort of species, maybe like an animal species that has other sensory perceptions, maybe like in the infrared, for example, then they're perceiving probably other realities that they consider like that would be considered physical dimension, but they're actually perceiving something quite different, even maybe beings who we aren't able to perceive directly in our five physical senses. But I think we can and do already have the capacities to sense these other frequencies, whether they're higher or lower, sort of that term high frequency perception being the capacity to sense other frequencies besides the physical dimension. And most of that could be or might be subliminal, what we might call subliminal or subconscious, particularly if that aspect of our reality is disregarded or not valued, by maybe the environment we're in or the people we're with, then we may start to not pay attention to it consciously. But since our consciousness is still registering it, it then goes into what we might call the subconscious, where someone who, when they're presented that information and then share that with others who then value that information or that sort of extra sensory perception, then they can continue to focus on it consciously. They feel accepted by having those perceptions and then can sharpen those perceptions consciously. So I think we're actually moving, most people here and the world, in a sense, is moving to accepting those higher perceptual realities and valuing them. And therefore, people are continuing to develop their what we might call clairvoyant abilities. And this probably will be very helpful and needed as we move into this kind of 21st century. And kind of what I was saying is some of the both the higher vibrations reaching the planet and also the challenges that we may be facing just as a species or as as humanity.
So the higher vibrations that are coming to the planet, we can really say that it's information. It could even be non-physical beings, right? And so as we develop our perception of them, we're able to translate that information into workable solutions for the planet. I love that concept. So as we develop these skills, I want to go back and mention that it's fascinating you mentioned the animals like plants or dogs, cats. We can see when they are very well of something in the room, right? So they're already aware of it. We humans have to catch up. And we know that many humans, especially watching and listening to shows like this, are already doing that. And the rest of us are like, well, we want that too. So it's very helpful to develop these abilities. And when we So I'm going to ask a question about sensing a frequency shift. So if we're all of a sudden feeling an ear ring, that's a frequency shift, right? That could be information coming in. So ears ringing, like different sensations in our body and our head. What is going on there? Is this part of what you're talking about, where it's a frequency coming in? We just have to pay attention and discern and decipher it.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, this idea of a lot of this information being in a subliminal or subconscious state, I think is a good point to start in answering or kind of delving into the point that you brought up. Like sometimes people will hear a ringing in their ears that we've discussed in other mastery empowerment courses, and of course, this is kind of a unique time where that ringing occurs, not a constant ringing, which could be of physical origin. They call it tinnitus, but more like the ringing's not really happening, and then all of a sudden it will happen very for a short period of time, or
Yeah.
within some context of a like an energy or spiritual maybe encounter. And usually that means some interpretations of that is that some type of guide, non-physical guide or spiritual being, or some type of spiritual message is coming through. And like I've had that, and I think you've mentioned you've had that experience and have had experiences of following that, those intuitions or messages from that, to have significant, had major significant um, decisions in my life from that, which of course were beneficial. And the idea is that probably, we're sort of bathed in this presences of other spiritual beings. And we're really in the context of what I call scientific materialism. So, which is the belief that, or framework that what's real is the physical world, the five physical senses. And if it's extreme, if that's an extreme sort of kind of concept, then that would even say that there's nothing else but the physical world. And then, of course, there's variations on that. So then all these types of spiritual presences or non-physical beings that are in our midst would be closed down to a person like that, at least consciously. So then if I always take this example, if you were a spiritual being or a guide for someone who actually had adopted that kind of perceptual framework, mostly because of their environment, like going to school, or and then even more school, which continues to reinforce that, at least let's say currently or in the last 100 years. Maybe that's changing now with more progressive schools that maybe take into account intuition, for example. Then how would I communicate to you? It would have to be through like maybe thoughts that kind of floated into your mind, but then that you would accept only as your own thoughts, because you wouldn't be able to kind of conceive of a reality where is something's not coming from your brain. Or you may receive it in a dream, or you may just receive it as sort of you just subconsciously start doing things. You don't even know really why you're doing them. You're kind of just pushed to doing them with these kind of influences. And so now that people are more open, like you said, probably people who are listening to this, maybe they've even honed these skills to a very high level, then they're more open for these spiritual presences to actually receive their message consciously. And that could become through like these high frequency tones, which is a very high level of perception within these kind of clairvoyant kind of ranges. And also just almost direct perception that this thought's not mine. This is like must be coming from my guide, who you start to feel has a certain frequency or resonance. So as really it's our perceptual sort of lens that we come to. If we don't acknowledge the spiritual world, then a lot of this information has to go through another channel, which I was calling subconscious or subliminal. And then if you're more open to it, then you can start to discern or parse what this information is, like where is it coming from in this non-physical band of perceptions.
It's really fascinating. And so what I love is that it's happening to us whether we're aware of it or not. And so as we become aware of it, what do we need to do? I know we're going to be doing transmissions with the Arcturians that will help develop specific centers that we're going to go into in a moment. But what needs to be done? What do we do? So if we just I think belief is a big part of this, as you mentioned, right? Believe or begin to unravel that. How do we begin to unravel that and trust? How have you done that in your own life?
Mhm. Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with responsibility. Uh, you know, uh, Another way to look at it is maybe for now, in someone's development. I'm not saying here, but you could imagine in someone's development, maybe it's better that, or they can, they're currently their lessons, what they're learning, what they're ready to handle is within the physical dimension. That's already super challenging because we probably came from a spiritual world in one way of thinking of it, where we were already clairvoyant, clair, everything, and then we kind of incarnated, and for a very specific reason to kind of have lessons in the physical dimension, and then to have on top of that perceptions of non-physical reality actually could either be overwhelming or sort of would skew you sort of away from the physical world. And I remember actually my mom talking about this. We come from a Chinese origin, so she would talk about like more kind of the earlier generations before mine. And they did, and I may have read this also in sort of Taoist books. Certain children they would see were in China were very clairvoyant. They could speak to the spirits and so forth. Uh, but that wasn't necessarily always, like we said, enhanced, even though they recognized it and knew that, because then you're sort of different than everyone, because a lot of people here don't come in with those gifts, even in a culture that would acknowledge that. And then also you have other issues. I won't call them problems. You have other things that you have to work through, handle, like to be able to see, let's say, people who've passed, their spirits all around them. That could actually keep you from like holding a normal job, for example, or contributing to society in a kind of normal way, because you're just like always having to handle that difference. So unless everyone else is kind of at your same level, it could be problematic in terms of just living a normal life. So sometimes they would discourage them, not that they didn't acknowledge that, they would sort of discourage so that the child could be successful in this world, that track. And then a lot of times it's part of their destiny, and they also recognize that. So then they just have to allow them to be who they are, as a sort of higher seer or higher, what we may say, high level clairvoyant. But their life actually may not actually be easier. It may be more difficult. So back to kind of the answer. That's why I think um, a species, as we become all more clairvoyant together, which is a different than like these unique kind of I don't know, superstars who come in, then will have their own lessons and issues. It's more responsibility. So I'll just give you an example. Are we ready to really know everything our partner, for example, is thinking? Are we ready to know what all our friends are thinking about us? Just stop there. And that's then we know why, I'll just say one last thing. Then we know why, see, people want to say, why am I not manifesting my clairvoyant abilities? I understand these practices. I've been doing these practices. So it's not just doing the practice. There's a whole nother set of practice, maybe on the um, emotional level, that just by answering that question. And a lot of people and myself would probably say, sometimes I'm not ready to know everything the people around me are thinking.
Yeah, it's hard enough when we get like opinions thrown at us. It's so that makes perfect sense. Okay. So what is needed here is a honing of these skills and abilities, a development of certain areas. And that's what these transmissions are going to do. We're going to do 3 days and we're going to develop the head center, the heart center, the belly center, and the first center above the head, because that's where this information is coming in. And so it's really wonderful. I do want to say there is a question coming in on our YouTube channel. Thank you, Bridget. Bridget says, I always ask for the messages to come in a way where I can understand them when I get that ringing in the ears, but I never really know what's coming through. Any suggestions to get more clarity? Right? So how can we do that for more clarity? And this is what these transmissions are going to help us do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just to give an example, a lot of the practices that I've learned, I studied with a school that actually was very focused on developing clear vision. It's called clear vision that I mentioned before in other classes, started by Samuel Sagan. And the basic idea, kind of weaving this idea of like, are we ready are we ready for that responsibility is one of the basic ways to develop these are like these different centers. They could also be different chakras that people know about. And the gist of it, if we boiled it down to the simplest version of all of the exercises, and there's variations that can make them more complex, is let's say you want to develop this third eye area here in between the eyebrows. If you just spent 5 minutes a day focusing right here, and then, whenever your mind wanders, you come back here to your they call it the ajna. If you do that for a good year, it could be less, let's say 30 days. This center will start to what they call crystallize. It doesn't become hard like the crystal, but it just becomes more structured. And then its function comes online, which is to perceive, just like it's very close to our physical eyes, but it perceives like our physical eyes for those light frequencies. It perceives these higher frequencies, or you could call them non-physical frequencies, just like an eye. That's why maybe we call it the third eye. And then you can start to see, these other dimensional states. However, if you have mental blocks, they're held in these chakras. So that's the thing. That's what's actually also holding us back, from getting the perceptions. So as you spend those 30 days to a year focusing just on their 5 minutes a day, those things are going to come up and you're going to work through them, and that working through will allow you those perceptions to come in. Because in the end, like I said, all of this information is already present to us. We're already receiving, like, even though we don't want to know maybe what our mate or our partner or our best friends are really thinking, we actually do know. Most people would say, yeah, I actually, when the truth came out, I kind of knew I already knew that. It's just that we don't have anything to necessarily confirm or not that's in the physical world if they're very good at maybe hiding that or camouflaging that, or they're not physically present. So to make it conscious is a lot of times is that releasing of those blocks as you spend time doing the exercises. So the exercise is the acceleration of the development of those centers.
Okay, that's fascinating because I'm reminded of intuition and hindsight is 2020. And so when we have experiences of intuition, maybe we're like, I should take my raincoat or my umbrella. And then our mind is like, no, I'm too busy. It's not going to rain. And then we're like, wow, I overrode my intuition. And then it goes even deeper. I've even had dreams where I got pulled over by a police car and the next day I was on the road and that dream came in my mind, but I still got into the HOV lane ahead of when it was open and I got pulled over by a cop and I overrode my intuition. So that's kind of like we're getting it. So just tuning into it even more and making it conscious. So clearing the blocks is necessary. Working through, what do you mean when we work through it? How would we identify when there's a block coming up? Like that intuition example. we have a block where our mind is stronger than our intuition saying, no, no, no. And I guess the experience of recognizing where we overrode our intuition is helping to clear the blocks, right? That would
Mhm.
be an example of working through it. Am I
Mhm.
accurate there?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we'll probably know when the block comes. These sometimes they're emotional scars,
Mhm.
uh, and but we may not realize that it's actually part of the process of developing the intuition, and sometimes that can stop a person from continuing the exercises. Then these are where all the different excuses come in for these kind of not doing the practice. Continue to do the practice as you go deeper. I'll just give one example. Like these, even though we're working on these different centers on each of the different days, the head center on the first day with the transmission, heart, and then belly, and then the first chakra above the head, like they're interconnected. So, like the heart center has to be more fully developed or fully developed to actually open up the head centers. A lot of different spiritual teachers like Rudolf Steiner, and I studied with Master Chokoku Sui, and they were kind of not quoting each other, but they said the same thing. The heart center actually has to open before the head center can be fully opened because there's a certain they call it like a pink prana that actually comes up from the heart through the central channel and then fully opens up the head centers. But we can see like just focusing on the heart. If you start focusing on the heart and you have some major like traumas from there, either in past lives or this life, they're going to get reactivated as one. Some people can't even like initially feel that heart center. So, but if we could imagine like those are going to come up, but just realize that that's part of the process of developing your clairvoyance because in a sense, just think of a person who you might go to as a clairvoyant, and let's say there's other spiritual beings sort of maybe, I wouldn't call policing the situation, but everything's interconnected. Spiritual beings, particularly the higher ones who are dedicated to helping, are probably watching what's going on. You could just imagine the scenario, whether it's true or not. Do you really want someone who is super developed and can see things who doesn't really have an open heart? Like you gotta like kind of think of these. There are people who may have gone through that, but there are sort of checks and balances, I think, in the spiritual world. Like someone might be thinking, I could be super clairvoyant and then be super like get everything done for myself. There are going to be some checks on that in the spiritual world. you
That's
know so they've got, that's why even if this mechanism, just kind of thinking about it, yeah, you would want someone to have developed their heart center before they can really open up the head center, regardless if it's just a mechanism, because you want someone who, even if they saw all your problems, they have the heart. Maybe they won't say anything because that's actually the right thing to do for out of compassion, because a person's not ready to hear all of that. And that would be a really wise person who could handle the responsibility of that gift. See, that's what I'm thinking. You see, well, sometimes we only think of the development of these clairs within ourselves, but we're really delving now into something like an interdependent, and spiritual beings, particularly the higher ones, are going to watch that, because a person who can elevate themselves a little bit beyond where humanity is currently, meaning they develop the ability like to heal. Really, just healing is actually working with energy, because it could go either way. You could send energy in a way that is manipulative, or it could be healing, meaning you're not going to get anything out of it. You're just really helping the person. And the same with sensing. So there's kind of these, I think, internal checks and balances that aren't like really thought about, but that take into account the development. So
Thank you. Thank you. All right. That makes perfect sense. So we're excited to develop these areas and really decipher the information and make it conscious, as you were saying. And so in these transmissions with the Arcturians, they're so supportive. They are helping us. They're almost like rewiring us, or they're downloading us information so that we can become more aware of this information. And so let's go over the 3 days for everyone so that they get an idea of what we're going to be talking about. We can talk about developing the head, developing the heart center, and the belly center, and the first center above the head. Can you share a little bit about each of these areas and what we can expect?
Yeah, you can think of these as like different frequency ranges, that are non-physical. So the head center kind of receives a frequency range. You could think of it as higher clairvoyance or, can see things at a higher level. So these might be colors or lights around a person, images around a person, if their thought forms have changed into images or color frequencies or their emotional state. Whether you see that as a kind of visual thing or you just receive that, this would be kind of these head centers. The heart center receives more on the emotional level. So as we're kind of going through this, people might see where their strengths are already. Like maybe they sometimes call that empathic, meaning they really, when someone feels something, they immediately can tell where their state of, feeling is without maybe even visual cues, which of course, our subconscious visual cues are actually very highly perceptive. But let's say they don't even see them. They're like in another country or another state, or so then they're receiving kind of a non-physical subconscious cues to their emotional state. And of course, we probably combine both to that. For example, when you listen to a speaker, a lot of times after the hour or so, you don't really remember the conscious content, but we're all highly perceptual on sort of subconscious physical cues, also voice cues. But what we're talking about is even beyond that, but it's all kind of combined. So this would be more on the emotional level. Finally, at the belly level, we're receiving sort of more sort of what we call that the gut instinct. You could call this lower clairvoyance, although it's not really a judgmental piece. It's more like what the vibration is. So people who kind of are very good at making decisions in business, similar to animals, when they sense danger or they sense fear in another species, another animal, they kind of can act on that. They also might leave a certain environment before, like a tsunami comes or a major storm, maybe a day or two before. So they're actually tuning into the vibrations that might be coming from the land energies. So we also have remnants, or we have that capacity, mostly from the belly region. And then we mentioned kind of working with pack thoughts, which we might call telepathy. That's really developing the frequencies from the first chakra above the head.
Okay, we are excited because we know many of us watching and listening to this love trees, love the environment, love animals, love nature, but yet we want to communicate even more. And this is going to allow us to develop those skills even better and to trust, this whole level of trust. And so, what it feels like to trust. And then, as we go about our lives experiencing situations and receiving validation on those experiences, that then becomes our truth. So together, I can see that world. Together, we can talk to trees. We're already, when we get messages and we hear the tree's name or the tree says something to us, that just becomes validation. So it's very exciting. And for those who wonder, how do I do it? How do I do it more? This would give us the bandwidth to do it more, the frequencies to do it more. All right, wonderful. Well, let's do a little mini transmission. I know it's just a few moments, but we can feel it. So what do you have in store to share with us for this?
Yeah, we'll do a transmission just to take your whatever your current ability is. Maybe you're empathic, maybe as in the description, you're very good at sort of sensing those land energies or kind of the more at the kind of similar to that gut instinct. Maybe you're already seeing colors and lights. And we'll just take that to the, next level, kind of improve that. And so we'll just ask for a transmission from the Arcturians to assist in that sort of moving us forward a little bit on our greatest strength. All right. So people can just relax and just see what you feel and just receive and just notice. So we're beginning the Arcturian high frequency perception transmission to improve our current strength to the next level. Whichever perceptual skill that we may feel is our natural intuitive capacity. That might be seeing energies, colors, lights, forms. It may be kind of a telepathic knowing of thoughts. May be an empathic resonance with other people, animals, environments, spaces on the feeling level. Also, maybe an intuition about land energies, the weather, kind of more earth based frequencies coming from the belly. We're deepening the download now. Also, we're letting go of something usually as you move forward in your perceptions. As we were discussing before, you're releasing some pattern that allows these higher energies to come in, but you're also letting go of maybe something we're subconsciously hiding. And that completes the Arcturian high frequency perception transmission. You can gently come back to your physical body now. When you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes and snap your fingers.
Mm. Okay, in just those few precious moments, it was really very interesting. So, for those who are new to this experience, it's okay if you didn't feel anything. I want to share, we've been doing this for a while, and so I'm pretty attuned to the frequencies. And at first, I'm very sensitive to it. So first for me was this overwhelming feeling, sensation of trust. And then moving into it, I realized I'm a feeler. I'm more of a feeler. Yes, I do hear things as well, but first and foremost, I feel it.
Mm.
So when we were talking earlier about the ringing in the ears,
Hmm.
I was shown to go more into the feeling, what I'm feeling in the moment. And in the past, I was always like, oh, what I'm looking for like something else. I'm like thinking, what
Mm.
does it mean? I'm looking for audio or something. But I'm
Mm.
to go into the feeling, what am I feeling? And I'm all lit up with that awareness right now. Then when
Mm.
I went to the deepening level, I realized that that was one of the blocks for me is this judgment of it, this control of the mind saying it's got to be this way.
Mm.
So the feeling of it goes back to the open heart. So staying in the heart and wow, again, just those few moments were really incredible. And I hope that others watching this were able to feel something similar in their own unique way. But wow, okay. Can you imagine when we go into hours at a time with transmissions like this? It will just be really wonderful what happens for the group. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, thanks for that feedback. And then, what I was mentioning about the environment, like when you're with a community that shows up who also is very, perceptual with these non-physical frequencies, who can reinforce, things that people are seeing, particularly if we're in environments where either we're alone or just maybe one or two people we can share these sort of perceptions with. It's nice to be able to discuss, these other experiences, whether you have them here or you've had them before, so you can get that validation that is really important for learning.
Yes, all right. Thank you. So we are really excited for this next series of Mastery Empowerment courses. We invite you to register for it. You'll find the link in the YouTube description box and also on the webpage that got you here. You can sign up for it, and we look forward to seeing you. Again, the group is almost like soul family. Actually, it is soul family. And since we're watching this right now, that portal is already open, and pay attention to your dream space because that is a really active space for these transmissions and for connection with the group as well. So we're excited. Jean, is there anything else you'd like to add about these transmissions and this time together?
Oh yeah, I think it's great to be able to develop these skills, and to have these capacities. It really takes one's service level to kind of the next echelon or next capacities to be able to help people, particularly when you're able to see things that either they're not able to perceive consciously or to confirm things for people, that can really be very healing for them.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. Jean, thank you for bringing this through from the Arcturians. And we are really looking forward to seeing everyone there. If this resonates with you, then please, please, please join us. It'll be wonderful. Okay. Until then, we are bringing new earth with our skills and our responsibility due to service, our responsibility and our service for Gaia. Thank you, Jean.
Thanks,
Thank,
Lauren. Thanks, everyone.
thanks. Bye.
Bye.
This has been a presentation of New Earth One Network, your home for New Earth living. Access information, education, and videos on living from the heart in unity consciousness. Visit newearth1.com.